All right, hi everyone. I am Michael Tressler. I'm a senior consultant at Jabra. My job there, let's see, what's the next slide? Oh, let's thank all of our sponsors, by the way. I do know these things don't happen without them. So when you're in the market for things, or just go visit their booths and at least thank them. Even if you're not interested in whatever they may have to offer, just thank them for their time. I'm sure they appreciate the feedback. Agenda, I'm going to start with a warning. And the warning is this. I'm going to talk about the death of a human being for about a half hour in my presentation. If you do not want to do that and you want to hear technology, I recommend Tracy Hurst's section next door. Something happened to me last year. I didn't think I'd struggle already this early, but I'm going to talk about it. I feel I have to do this. I will also then talk about video collaboration. So the title of the show of something something, video collaboration something something, the something something is tragedy. No one would come if it says tragedy of video collaboration. So if you don't want to hear that, I'm not judging. Please leave. If you're going to say, Mike just had a depressing conversation for 30 minutes about death, please leave. If you want to stay, there will be video collaboration, and I promise it's not going to be sad the entire time. I make you that promise. We're going to talk about IntelliFrame. These are the nerd parts, the IntelliFrame and Enterprise Connect. The other parts are not technical at all. I guess introduction of who I am. Oh, here we go. I help people understand Jabra video solutions. You probably know Jabra for their headsets. A few years ago, Jabra bought a video camera company, and a lot of people think those cameras are really good, and my job is to convince you that they're really great. Like, they're good. Oh, did you know it can do this? That's what I do. I enjoy training and teaching. Blame my parents. My parents were both school teachers, both German teachers at that. So I was kind of raised with sharing knowledge. And coming up through the 90s and in the early internet, and share knowledge and information wants to be free. Share what you know, expect nothing in return, other than maybe a salary. I have too many vinyl records, and I like traveling, so it's tough to get me away from events like this. So I already gave the warning, sadness is ahead. So let's go. On April 21st, 2022, my girlfriend died. In my condo on the upstairs couch. She had surgery the night before, or the day before. She had surgery, and she ended up dying of a massive heart attack, massive coronary arrest. I mentioned my parents are German teachers. There's a reason for that. My mom is German. I was raised that you strive for the best. You don't settle. Even if you have no money, even if you're lower middle class. One of those things is, if you're eating at home, we're eating off plates and dishes and silverware. We're not eating off paper plates because you do that at a picnic. The day after the surgery, Jenny fell asleep on the upstairs couch. I checked on her. She was asleep, breathing. It's good. I went to bed downstairs where the bedroom is, the two-story townhome, so upstairs, kitchen, living room, downstairs, bedroom, office. I woke up in the morning, went up, checked on her. She was breathing, living. I went downstairs to the office, worked. Around 11:15 a.m., starting to get hungry. I'm like, I'm lazy, DoorDash. I want some barbecue. So I ordered barbecue off DoorDash, continued to work. I got the notification on, hey, your driver's about to be there. I'm like, well, I'm not eating out of the delivery materials coming from the barbecue thing. I'm going upstairs and getting my plate and my silverware because that's the way I was raised. I go up there, I see Jenny, blue lips, no color. I cussed loudly. Couple F. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Have you guys ever seen a dead body? One in the back. What do you do? Well, you call 911, and then you get put on hold for a minute, and you then, never having had CPR training, start doing whatever you can. And even though I heard in the background pinching the nose and breathing in, I forgot to pinch the nose even, breathing into the mouth, I'm like, whatever I'm going to do until I get off the hold. First thing the lady said is, well, where's the body? I'm like, on the couch. put her on the floor. So this is CPR training also. So if you weren't ready for CPR training, here it is. I'm not CPR certified, but if you're ever caught in a pinch and you're on hold, you can kind of start until they tell you the final details. So I got her on the floor. I kind of knew where to push, which is like, right here, kind of the sternum. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Bless this lady from Emergency Services, 911. For 12 minutes, she just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. The pace. At about the 8 minutes mark, I think I cried for the second time in my life because I was understanding the inevitability of what was happening. The first time I cried, by the way, is when Spock died. So, come on, how can you, as a man with no feelings, like when Spock dies, come on, how can you not cry? So then 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Eventually then, so I did that for 12 minutes. And then the fire department was at my front door. I had to leave her. They came up, moved everything out of the living room. There's an army of 10 people, and they were doing the, clear, and the mouth oxygen thing and hitting her with shots. I don't know. They spent, I probably should have advanced the slides to make this even sadder. They spent 12 minutes on her. And I'm standing in the back. Imagine in the middle of the room is where it's going on. I'm standing back here. And there's a couple of people who are doing other things, right? Taking notes. One lady was documenting the entire visit for reasons. Documenting the whole thing. And I'm like, I heard, oh, there's a change in the machine. And she's like, just be patient. There's a change in the machine. I hear a different thing. I hear them say something. And she's like, look, you'll know when you know. So here's the other fun part. I don't know when she died. I know when I went up to get a plate and silverware. I know when that happened. But did that happen? Did she die 10 seconds beforehand? 5 minutes? 10 minutes? 2 hours beforehand? So you're sitting there going, I have no idea what's going to happen or what's going on. Am I missing anything so far? Any questions? By the way, I have beaver nuggets for people who have questions. Any questions so far? Any detail I'm missing? I'm trying to think, because this went faster than this part of the story went faster than I thought it would. So let's just move on then. Let's talk IntelliFrame. Everybody excited for IntelliFrame? I told you it was going to be a technology talk. Woo-woo! So IntelliFrame is essentially, this is a video I swiped off Microsoft's site. And this video I wish I could pause, but you can't. But you see there's a conference room and 4 names. And notice she is in this panorama view at the bottom, but she is also in her own square. So right now, today, in Teams rooms, you get this view. Like if you're using a Panicast 50, you get that panorama view, and that's it. You get the view down the bowling alley. Now, you can change the view and kind of in your one square of the conference room, change what you see. But IntelliFrame promises that much like when we work from home, there's what's called meeting equity. So my Teams desktop client is going to look the same when you're in a conference room. So you're in a conference room, I'm in a square. When I'm at home, you're in the conference room, you're in a square too. So it's the same. So to do that, Microsoft has this thing that they're working on called IntelliFrame, where we, the camera manufacturers, send up an image, and then in version 1, Microsoft will take AI, figure out where faces are, and put them into their own little squares. And if you go so far as to registering your face, facial ID, it will then know who you are. Which is cool, because then you can see when someone is talking in a conference room, as you don't know everyone there, you can say, oh, Serena Davis said that. I know who she is now. Which is extra cool, because if you don't know who people are, and you go to the office for the first time in 3 months, like I saw you in a meeting, I forget your name. It's like, well, for an hour, I saw Serena Davis's name come and go. So there's a lot of cool things to this coming up. So there's a lot of words. I generally don't like to have a lot of words on my slides, but if you want to, I just wanted to say there's two basic modes of IntelliFrame. Any camera. So any camera, the camera on my Surface laptop could be the camera for IntelliFrame. And then there's a thing called intelligent camera. Essentially, an intelligent camera, doesn't say it on here, it has the ability to send multiple streams of video at the same time. So a dumb camera sends, and can only send one stream of camera. I don't mean dumb, because like our Panacast 20 has a bunch of AI, and it can zoom and focus, but it ultimately sends one thing, one stream. Cameras like the Panacast 50, things from Poly, Logitech, Jabra, Neat, and Link will be able to send multiple streams, which then means the Microsoft Cloud on the back end doesn't have to do the AI, because the camera, we've already framed the faces of the active speakers. So what is the impact of that? So this is Zoom, all right? Zoom already has what they call Smart Gallery, I think that's what it's called, in place today. So this is a call I did. You can see, yes, I was using a smart camera, but sending one single stream. Zoom does not yet accept multiple streams, or at least not from a Jabra Panacast. So you can see, this is a remote attendee. This is Rob, he's in Portland, Oregon. Myself and my little friends are in Florida, so cross country. And Zoom itself, so this is the panorama, this is a view of the conference room. And then since these two are that close to each other, decided to put them in one frame. I'm by myself, put me in another frame. Now we don't have names, it just says conference room, so it calls this, you probably can't read it from the back, conference room 4. And this is conference room 4.1, the first subsection of conference room 4.1, and 4.2, the second view of conference room 4. So without facial recognition, it's going to be something along those lines. So just to be clear what happens here, on a Jabra Panacast 50 connected to a Zoom meeting, we send up the thing. We tell Zoom, use Smart Gallery View and break out our faces. And then in the cloud, now I'm not exactly sure, somebody implied the other day that there's some onboard processing on the Windows compute that happens, maybe some pre-processing, and then sends it off to Zoom. It's going to be very similar to what Microsoft does, right? This is why I'm showing this, because we can't see the Microsoft one yet, so let's see what this might look like as it comes. The problem is, we're sending a single 1080p frame, this, and Zoom has to digitally zoom in. That is the image. That does not look amazing. That is not an image that we at Jabra are proud of, or that Neat, Link, Poly, who else was on the list? would be proud of either. And this is what I expect we're going to see when Microsoft releases IntelliFrame 1. Or, this is why Microsoft hasn't released it yet, because they don't want this. I am saying Zoom. I have all confidence that they have very intelligent engineers. So this is not a Zoom bashing session. Don't leave here at all saying, boy, Zoom video is terrible. Zoom came first. They were like, this is good enough. And it is good enough. Right? When you go back to a smaller view, that is good enough. It's only when you zoom in and make it a super large screen, you can see that it is a poor image, not very poor. It's a poor image. So is Microsoft waiting to sprinkle AI on that and then to do, upscaling or dynamic upscaling? And then what is the cost of that? To be determined. But that is IntelliFrame, an example of what it is. So what it is and an example of how a competitor is doing it and what we might expect. Any questions? Yes. Oh, hey, you get beaver nuggets. Yep.
How does it know who that person is?
It doesn't, which is where Zoom oops, I'm going the wrong way. Which is where Zoom just calls you. So this is conference room 4, image 1. This is just, so that way at least remotely you know that I am in conference room 4. So you know, because you just see this. Where's that guy? We know Rob, he's in a totally different space, and then you get into the other thing, maybe to your point, am I to the left or to the right of Taylor and Rock? So if you see my head turn this way to talk, Am I talking to someone else or am I talking to Taylor and Rock? Or is it Taylor or Rock? Imagine if they were on either side of me and I turn to the right and you don't see them. So there's other things about, again, to be determined of, will the layout then be in a left to right, top to bottom order, which is awfully Western civilization-y? Or so that when someone turns, or does it become a different layout than kind of a 2x2 grid? So yeah, so unless you register your face. Now, I have given it thought of, Teams Rooms has intelligent speakers, so where you can register your voice print. Well, if it knows my voice print, can we then link the camera stream that is sending audio to that person reliably? So we could do it off voice prints. It gets problematic in a busy conversation of trying to attribute the face. We can attribute the voice. We know the voice print, but can we map to a face based solely off audio? Maybe. Maybe it'll be a later thing. Yes? That should probably say IntelliFrame, not IntelliSense. It's a bad PowerPoint title. That is a Microsoft term. They're calling it IntelliFrame. I think the other slides say IntelliFrame, don't they? Or do they say IntelliSense? Yeah, IntelliFrame. I missed that when I did my PowerPoints. So.
And then the cameras are already capable of doing this. It's Microsoft.
Mostly. So working at Jabra, and I'm sure the others are the same, we are working with Microsoft. They send us dev code, and then we send it back to make sure we're sending the stream correctly. They will update their things on, oh, you're sending what we asked you to, but it's not what we're expecting. Like now that we see a live feed, we may have to change that. So work is being done on both sides from all of those vendors on that list and from Microsoft for that. But Microsoft will release the dumb camera one first, which is what we see in the Zoom samples. Tom? Take these. Are you going to see Martin soon? I have a large bag of beaver nuggets I owe him, so I'll give you the large bag. Okay.
If we're seeing cameras getting kind of smarter, right, and coming up with this information, have you seen anything around like any API access for like not only are there 3 people in that room, but actually there's 20 chairs in that room? Like that's a capacity problem, right?
So we can count the number of people in the room. All the vendors can do that. They can go like there's 5 faces because they can then zoom in and give that. Counting chairs isn't done. It's not done that way. You predefine in like your Outlook count value settings that this room that we define as an Outlook resource has space for 8 people. That then feeds in, and then or you tell the camera itself that this camera is in a room for 8 people. Then that feeds back to the notification in the front of the room that the room is full.
Yeah, it feels like if they're intelligent cameras, they should be like, that's a really big room. Like,
That's
like my phone can be like, yeah, it's 7 by 5. Like,
some of that measurement comes, I know Neat is doing it now. If the other cameras do it, just feel free. Neat can do, so these cameras are picking out the faces. What if you are behind a glass wall, right? So you're not in the conference room, but your face is exactly where it is. How do we not add you, even though your face is crystal clear because you're behind a window, essentially? But the camera's like, there's a face. So there are depth sensors or algorithms that can estimate the sense of how far you are, and then you basically say anyone that is in the 3rd row of chairs, cut them off. They're not to be put into this IntelliFrame view. They're outside the room.
so is it you just turn it on or off to register or scan the face? Like, for example,
By the way, this is the last question, so no more questions after this one. I'm out of prizes.
so what if I don't want my face scanned? Is the whole room gets scanned?
Yes.
Or everybody just gets in line and scans the face?
Oh, so for the facial scanning, that is yet to be released. I can only presume, make guesses based on what they did on the audio side. So currently, Teams can take voice prints. And if you have an intelligent speaker from Sennheiser, Yalink, and EPOS, when you're in a meeting with that enabled with the right circumstances, it will then know you said that, and basically that goes to the transcription of the meeting, so that you can say later, Bob actually said this, not someone sitting in conference room 4 said this. So you do that in the Teams client. If it's been enabled in your tenant, you go to the Teams client, you read a paragraph That's how they take the voice print. I presume that there will be a section right underneath it or above it in the Teams client where it's like, take your picture, rotate, 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 look up, look down, and they'll take the face print. Then once it's there, it's in your tenant, it's secured in your tenant, it's not out on the internet. Then if you go to a meeting that has that enabled and then they'll try to match up the faces. It may end up being like the audio side where it basically loads up the audio fingerprints of people who are on the Outlook invite. So it doesn't just go through, like if you're a company like Microsoft, 180,000 employees, it doesn't try to match 180,000 voice prints. So the face print may be like you were invited to the meeting. I expect to see any of these 10 people. And then if I see them, I can then put their name, attach it to them.
Yeah, I will anticipate misgivings that average end users will have about having their
It's definitely a thing that is, and that's why by default all the voice stuff is off by default. You have to enable it for your tenant. And then the end users have to agree to read the paragraph. Now you could coerce, read the paragraph or go work somewhere else. But yeah, it's anytime biometrics are involved, a lot of people won't do it. And some people like me are like, yeah, whatever. My face is on, I told you, go to LinkedIn, you can see pictures of me. Like my face is whatever. Any other questions about IntelliFrame, what it is, and why you shouldn't get your hopes up too high for level 1? I'd love it if Microsoft threw a bunch of AI and was able to clean this image up a little for the dumb camera. Now, when it's a high camera, we're going to be sending 1080p frames of the camera focused on you, not an image of the room, and then we're going to figure out the faces after the fact. So it is highly anticipated that these smart cameras will have a much sharper image, even if it is from a 13 megapixel 4K, which this is from. Yes, Ron?
Was there a time frame on when we were expecting to see IntelliFrame come out first?
Yeah, well, they announced it at Ignite, and it's been 6 months. And I can just say that work is continuing based off what I hear internally at Jabra.
Do you know if it does grouping?
Grouping, how do you mean?
Like two people, like
This? To be determined what Microsoft does. Obviously, Zoom does grouping. When two faces are close enough, we're just going to put them in one frame. Then if, obviously I'm standing further apart.
Is there a limit to the number of streams that bandwidth a concern?
Bandwidth could be a concern because you're sending 3 or 4 streams of ostensibly 1080p, so you're sending 4 times as many upstream video. Downstream into all the attendees, it's the exact same. You're just getting, whatever. It's essentially the same, except for maybe in the past you got this, now you're getting 2 other feeds. But depending on it, like in Teams, if you don't have these full screen, it'll down rev it to 720p or 480p until you zoom, make it full screen, then it'll request a higher feed. So it won't be a huge impact on remote attendees, just the upstream is going to be the bigger impact. If you were sending a 1080p feed, now you're sending 4 of them, or 3 of them in some cases. Yeah, with meetings going on at the same time, correct. Anything else? Good questions. I wish I'd have brought more snacks, but I was in Dallas. So the reason I asked if Tom was going to see Martin Bohm, Martin and I do a show called Teams Fridays every other Friday. Check me out follow me on LinkedIn. I'll get the link. And we talk about all kinds of things on that show, everything from Teams for Education to things, Teams rooms, very nerdy things like that. Viva, we've talked about Viva, things like that. So Martin was supposed to be here. He had a family issue. He wasn't able to make it. But I was in Dallas 2 weeks ago. I'm like, I'm going to get beaver nuggets. Because on one of our Teams Friday shows, I'd gone to Buc-ee's, long story short. And so I'm like, here, Martin, you can finally have your beaver nuggets. And that's why the handouts are the small, because I only had carry-on and a backpack, so I couldn't have a third thing to carry onto the plane. I didn't want to check my bags, so that's why there's a large bag of beaver nuggets upstairs and the 4 small ones. There's your beaver nugget story. All right, any other questions? Yes?
Any chance we'll be looking at dynamic background or green screen support? Granted, these are MTRs, but someone's going to try and use it.
So, yes. In front row, and I don't have an image of front row view handy, But in front row, it's essentially all these four faces down at the bottom, kind of at eye level. And the problem is, if you look at this, there's a lot of busyness in the background behind these two and behind me. And as your face is scanning around, you're really good at recognizing faces, but there's a lot of distraction that you have to get rid of. So it's a little more challenging on the eyes. That's why, there should be clear backgrounds, simple backgrounds behind you. Coming to front row very soon, they are going to wipe out the backgrounds and essentially make your floating head on top of a black background. So your eyes have nothing to filter out other than the faces. So that is coming to front row. A green screen, I'm not sure from Teams Room's native. Teams is adding it as a background. So when you can put your own custom backgrounds in the back and you get the blur and whatever, they're going to put green as one, green screen. Then in Microsoft, if you notice in Teams lately, they're doing a lot of video filters, including Snapchat stuff. There'll probably be a way to then put your own custom backgrounds over the green screen. Now, some of the webcam vendors are looking to do that on camera really soon now. Anything we can share? Nope, nothing we can share. I don't know who would do that. There's a couple cameras out there that do that. But you can use XSplit, for example, is what I use to green screen on the background. So I can't necessarily answer a green screen, but I can say Microsoft is doing background replacements.
Might be off topic, but I'm curious about multi-camera setup. And IntelliFrame kind of leads to the question, throw more feeds at it.
We'll throw more feeds at it, why not? It is accurate. Your point is correct. The three streams don't have to come from one camera. They ultimately will come from the compute module, right? The USB ports that come in, the streams come into the Teams Rooms app running on the PC. It then takes those and then it sends the streams up to the cloud to slice and dice. No, Jabra has nothing to announce. But if you look at the demos and announcements from Logi and Neat with multiple cameras center of table, if I were looking, well, I kind of am, but if you see the side of my face, but there were a camera here, it would send the stream from a different camera than what they are receiving, than the camera they're getting. So multiple cameras is a thing. Logi is going live soon, June, July. Anybody know when they expect to go to market? June, July. Neat always said the fall, and I'm sure. Yeah, and I'm sure other vendors are eagerly looking to do the same.
Is multi-camera just for third party, or do you see it in the first party?
So in a way, the way I understand it is that there's essentially controller software somewhere from Logi or Neat that is, so the cameras send the thing in, they send all their images to that software, which then decides which one has the cleanest view of the face, and then presents that to Teams. So,
Right, okay, so
it's going to be third party.
So you can solve the software problem, right?
Yeah. So the question is, how many cameras can you have? And then, is there anything interesting Teams could do to do sort of a virtual director kind of thing? To like, I want to make it artsy and show the side of face while this person's talking, and then cut back to, or that I've been stuck on this view for 32 seconds. This is boring. Let me just pick a different view for 5 seconds just to break it up. Yeah, Copilot presenter.
I guess that leads to the question in the basic version. Especially when we talk larger events, live events, et cetera, with third-party ingest, whether it's NDI or when you're talking about third-party software controlling,
Mm-hmm.
what if we're doing professional editing, professional shooting, we want to drop that in and still have facial recognition.
So you essentially would, because should be a Teams Room certified device on Teams Rooms, so caveat, asterisk. But ultimately, it's a video stream coming in. So if that is via NDI or some other pro mixing something, I can only guess that it would work in Teams. We won't know until, if they may lock it to just the certified for the dumb camera view. For the intelligent camera, it's going to be certified devices because they're working with the vendors to make sure it works. And each camera has unique things. Like the Pentacast 50 can send an ultra-wide image that no other camera can. So that has to be accounted for by Microsoft. If we see a Jabra load these additional libraries to handle ultra-wide views. Anything else? I don't mean to make my face big. I'm just advancing to the slide until someone says no more questions. All right, no more questions.
His daddy can't talk.
Look who knows so much, huh? Well, it just so happens that your friend here is only mostly dead. There's a big difference between mostly dead and all dead. Please open his mouth. Now, mostly dead is slightly alive. Now, all dead, well, with all dead, there's usually only one thing that you can do.
What's that?
Go through his clothes and look for loose change.
In the 25th minute, they detected a faint heart rate. I didn't know what that meant, but they kept working on her. And after 3 more minutes, they put her on a gurney and took her to the ER. So she's alive. But is she alive? So she was just mostly dead. Come to find out, for at least 25 minutes, she was mostly dead. Could have been for, based on what I read after the fact, CPR can keep someone alive for roughly 40 minutes without breathing, without a heart rate. What ends up happening is you have oxygen in your blood. The CPR is just keeping oxygen coming to the brain. Doesn't mean there can't be brain damage. Doesn't mean that it's a short term, we got lucky for a few minutes. She was in a coma in the hospital, in and out for 2.5 weeks. Came out of it, had strokes while she was in the coma. There's brain damage. Brain took a major hit. So she stroked out twice, at least. What else do we need to know? So she started coming to. They mentioned she was on intubated, right, tube, artificially breathing machines and everything to keep her alive, until a point they were able to take out the intubation. Until they were able to see movement from her, voluntary movement, to the point where she could answer questions with a thumbs up, thumbs down. So she was at least comprehending things. Because depending on, I don't know, I'm not a doctor, but someone who's been dead for at least 25 minutes, at least, like you start thinking, is there any quality of life after this? Just maybe having the heartbeat is a curse and not a blessing. At one point, the joy of the American medical system, they sent her home, and she stayed with me. She could not move at all. I'm not a hero, but I had to keep her alive. I had to feed her. I had to drink, move her, everything. She was in no position to be handled by someone like me who was still working. If you're working with me when I was at Microsoft at the time, every 15 minutes I'd get up and check on her. Every 15 minutes, except for when I was asleep. This is, fortunately through services, the girl on the right. She's studying to become a nurse. And she works at a nursing service, and so she would, I don't know how to do braids. Like, why would I? So she would braid her hair. I asked her, just talk to Jenny. She hears my voice, what I have to say, a female voice, a female conversation. Even if she can't respond, she can nod. She can put her thumbs up. She can put a thumbs down. And she's like, I don't know what to talk about. Just like anything, like, hey, talk to me. Go.
How's it going? Glad to hear it. The sun is shining.
See, now you have to start going, right? Until you're like, she's like, what do I talk about? Tell her about your car. You have a car? Yeah, it's just a junky Hyundai. Tell her why it's a junky. You bought it used. You got in a wreck. You've had the car since you were 16. Just tell her. Memory loss. She remembers nothing of what happened, but she does remember her. She was only around 4 visits, maybe 5 visits. And I think it's because that time she also showered her, those kind of things. Here she is after the hospital. So once she has a twin sister and an older sister, and they are the ones responsible for her medical, like legal medical decisions, not me. So they finally got her back into another hospital because like this is not okay. She's not going to get better. They took her back into the this is at long-term care at the hospital, and they're like, why did they discharge her? And it's like American medical system. They needed a free bed. That's why they discharged her. And then we took her to a different hospital. They took her in. It's like, wow, that was a mistake. So here she is. You can see now she can drink on her own. That's a Chick-fil-A milkshake. She can drink on her own. She's got some snacks and food, so she can start feeding herself. Difficulty moving at this point. I believe now she could whisper talk. Yeah, come here. So voice was starting to return. We're still not sure on, at this point, mental, how far is she advancing after all that. Here you can see classic stroke with the neck hanging on the side. She couldn't walk, she couldn't stand up. I did the dressing, so we were coming up towards the World Cup. When I packed clothes for her thing, I'm like, we're going to get the USA jersey when the World Cup's coming up. Here you can see struggling, but trying to use a fork and knife. These are all like little steps. I haven't had children, but I imagine like a whole child going from being immovable and needing complete support from everyone around them to like, hey, look, our kid can roughly use a spoon. Like these are all advances that are exciting. Just here, I would go, her sisters would go, just put her on a wheelchair, push her outside so she could see the sun. So we could get to different. My whole thing, not a doctor, just being an IT nerd, is mental stimulation, see different things. So when she was with me, we would watch Family Feud. It's a simple game, everybody knows it, not terribly mentally challenging, but everybody has a guess on, give me 5 things that you would see at a basketball game, right? Basketball players, a basketball, a goal, fans, cheerleaders, a coach. So it's not mentally, but it's to get her to think. So whenever I would visit her, I made a point to take her outside, get the sun, if for nothing else, vitamin D, but different stimuli than she's getting inside the center. She can stand. That's her father. Rest in peace. To add to the fun of the story, he passed away about 3 months ago. She does not remember this. There weren't pictures. She just like she worships and loves her dad. And it's a shame that she doesn't remember that. Roughly at the same time, that's her older sister. Again, she can stand. She's wearing glasses now. We got her glasses during this whole thing because she always had poor eyesight, so let's see if we can get you used to that. Here, this is at the center on the back. There's a lake, so let's look at turtles, fish, whatever, to get going. We went out shopping. She got to leave the facility. So this is all, so I started this whole session really sad and depressed. Hopefully you're feeling like maybe there is something good coming up here. So we'll leave it at that. That's where we're at. Enterprise Connect in Orlando. I was there, and Microsoft had an announcement. I want to make sure a couple things didn't get missed. Microsoft, and when I worked at Microsoft, BYOD was the enemy. Zoom was enemy number 2, probably, behind BYOD. If you ever listen to Ilya or other people talk, it's like